When we talk about relationships, we often imagine two people trying to love each other the best way they know how. Yet, so much of that love goes unseen or misunderstood simply because the languages of men and women are not always spoken in the same tone, with the same rhythm, or with the same emotional vocabulary. In many marriages, it is not a lack of love that creates distance. It is the assumptions, those quiet, unspoken misunderstandings, that shape the way we interpret each other. And when it comes to men, those misunderstandings can be particularly costly. Many relationships struggle not because love is absent, but because love is expressed in different dialects. When it comes to men, one of the most persistent misunderstandings is assuming that if they don't say "I love you" often, if they don't articulate feelings with emotional fluency, or if they don't initiate long conversations about the relationship, then their love must be fading. But for many men, love is not primarily expressed through words. It is expressed through action, consistency, and responsibility. This creates a tension in marriages where one partner relies heavily on verbal connection, while the other speaks a quieter but no less powerful language. Men often grow up learning that emotion is something to manage, not display, and affection is something to show, not necessarily speak about. So when a man fixes something around the house without being asked, when he wakes up early to warm the car before you leave, when he works long hours to provide, or when he ensures that your comfort is quietly handled in the background, these are his ways of saying, "I see you. I care. You matter to me." Yet because these behaviors lack the emotional flourish of words, they can be easily overlooked or underestimated. Many women interpret this minimal verbal expression as emotional distance, but the truth is more nuanced. For many men, the act of doing is the act of loving. They may not express affection as richly through language because they don't feel as skilled in that realm, and people rarely enjoy performing in areas where they feel inadequate. Instead, they offer love where they feel they can succeed. And when their efforts go unnoticed or unappreciated, they may internalize it as a personal failure, even if they never voice that feeling. They might think, "I'm doing everything I can, and it's still not enough," creating a quiet resignation inside them that builds emotional walls in the relationship. This misunderstanding also creates an emotional gap because the partner who craves verbal reassurance may continue to ask for something he struggles to give, not realizing that he has been communicating love all along, just in a different form. Over time, she may interpret his silence as disconnection, and he may interpret her requests as accusations, each person missing the intention behind the other's expression. The irony is that both partners are doing their best to love one another, but their efforts are being translated through entirely different emotional filters. The key is recognizing that love expressed through action is not inferior to love expressed through words. It is simply another form of emotional commitment that deserves to be seen, valued, and understood. Emotional withdrawal is one of the most misunderstood behaviors men display in marriages, and it often triggers worry, frustration, or even resentment from their partners. When a man shuts down, becomes quiet, or seems distant, it is easy to interpret this as a lack of interest or care. But in many cases, his withdrawal is not a sign of detachment, it is a form of self-protection, a strategy to manage emotional overwhelm, or a way to process feelings he doesn't yet know how to articulate. Many men are conditioned from childhood to regulate their emotions internally rather than express them outwardly. They are often taught that composure equals strength and vulnerability equals exposure. So when tension arises, when conflict intensifies, or when they feel they have disappointed someone they love, their instinct is not to talk, but to retreat until they can regain a sense of control within themselves. This internal retreat can feel deeply personal to a partner who values communication as the primary pathway to connection. A woman might interpret her husband's silence as rejection, indifference, or emotional abandonment, when in reality he may be quietly wrestling with fears of saying the wrong thing, making the situation worse, or revealing emotions he has not yet fully sorted. Many men withdraw because they do not want to add more emotional weight to a moment already charged with intensity. They withdraw to avoid conflict, not to avoid their partner. They step back not because they don't care, but because they care so deeply that they worry their unfiltered reactions could cause harm. In this space of misunderstanding, both partners begin to misread intentions. The more she pushes for clarity, the more he retreats to protect the relationship from further tension. The more he retreats, the more she feels unseen or unheard. This cycle is not fueled by lack of love, but by a lack of translation. He is trying to calm the storm within himself, while she sees it as him stepping away from the relationship entirely. The truth is that many men need time to process emotions before they can voice them. Silence becomes a refuge, not a rejection. It is the space where they gather their thoughts, evaluate their feelings, and search for the right words they are often afraid to say out loud. Understanding this dynamic shifts the narrative. Instead of viewing withdrawal as the absence of care, it can be seen as an emotional pause, a moment where he is trying to steady himself so he can re-engage without causing more damage. When partners recognize the intent behind withdrawal, compassion replaces blame, and patience replaces pressure. This understanding creates a bridge that allows men to return to the conversation with clarity and partners to feel secure even in moments of silence. Many people assume that men avoid vulnerability because they don't feel things deeply, but this is one of the most damaging misunderstandings affecting marriages. Men often struggle with vulnerability not because their emotional world is shallow, but because their emotional world is rarely given permission to exist openly. From a young age, many men learn that strength is equated with emotional control, that showing fear or sadness invites judgment, and that expressing softer emotions makes them appear weak or inadequate. Over time, they internalize the idea that their value is tied to being reliable, steady, and unshakable. So when vulnerability arises, when they feel uncertain, insecure, or overwhelmed, they often hide these feelings, fearing that exposing them might disappoint the very person they want most to impress. In a marriage, this becomes a silent tension. A woman may long for emotional openness, deeper conversations, or more transparency about what her partner is feeling. She may interpret his reserved nature as emotional distance or a lack of trust. Yet, beneath his quiet exterior, he may be carrying fears he cannot voice: fear of not being enough, fear of failing his partner, fear of revealing emotions he has never learned to navigate. For many men, vulnerability feels like stepping onto a stage without knowing the script. They worry that opening up will expose the parts of themselves they have spent years trying to manage privately. And when they do attempt to express their feelings but feel misunderstood, minimized, or invalidated even unintentionally, they may retreat further, reinforcing the belief that vulnerability is dangerous. This becomes especially pronounced in moments of conflict or emotional intensity. When emotions escalate, men often feel a pressure to fix, to resolve, to stabilize. They believe that their role is to provide solutions, not emotional depth. So when their partner asks for vulnerability, it can feel like being asked to speak a language they never learned. It's not that they don't want to connect, it's that they fear saying the wrong thing, appearing inadequate, or being seen as less capable. Their silence is rarely indifference, it is often a shield crafted from years of social conditioning. Understanding this helps create space for curiosity rather than frustration. When a partner recognizes that a man's difficulty with vulnerability is rooted in fear, not lack of love, she can approach him with greater softness. Gentle invitations to share, responses that validate rather than correct, and patience with the pace at which he opens up can make vulnerability feel safer for him. Over time, he learns that emotional expression does not diminish him but deepens the connection he longs to maintain. This shift transforms vulnerability from something he avoids into something he gradually learns to trust within the relationship. Conflict often becomes a battleground in relationships not because of the disagreement itself, but because of the different ways men and women interpret and respond to tension. One of the most common misunderstandings in marriage is assuming that when a man avoids conflict, becomes quiet during an argument, or rushes to find a quick solution, he is minimizing the issue or dismissing his partner's feelings. In reality, many men interpret conflict through a completely different lens. They see conflict as a threat not to the relationship's stability alone, but to their role within it. They fear escalation, emotional overload, or saying something that could create irreparable damage. So while one partner may see conflict as a path toward closeness and understanding, he sees it as a storm he must either calm or escape from. Men often grow up learning that expressing emotion during conflict is risky, that anger needs to be controlled, and that vulnerability in heated moments could be used against them. As adults, this translates into a conflict style marked by withdrawal, solution-oriented thinking, or attempts to restore peace quickly. He may interrupt to provide answers, try to fix the problem before the emotions are processed, or try to end the argument prematurely. To his partner, this may feel like emotional shutdown or avoidance, but to him, it is an attempt to protect the relationship from further harm. He believes that if he can resolve the issue efficiently, everything will stabilize. What he doesn't see is that his partner often needs emotional presence, not immediate solutions. This mismatch in conflict languages creates a cycle of misunderstanding. The more she seeks emotional expression, the more he tries to calm the situation logically. The more he tries to fix things quickly, the more she feels unheard or dismissed. Each person believes they are doing what will help, yet each interprets the other's actions through their own emotional framework. For men, restoring peace is not avoidance, it is their version of care. It is their way of saying, "I want us to be okay." But because they often skip the emotional part of the conversation, their partners may never feel the reassurance behind their intentions. Understanding this dynamic changes the entire emotional landscape during conflict. It allows partners to recognize that conflict avoidance is often rooted in fear, not disconnection. It is a man's attempt to keep the relationship intact, even if the execution feels confusing or frustrating. When both partners realize that the difference lies not in the depth of care but in the method of expression, conflict becomes less of a battle and more of an opportunity to bridge emotional worlds. This understanding fosters empathy, patience, and a new way of engaging during heated moments, one that honors both emotional expression and the desire for harmony. One of the most overlooked yet profoundly impactful aspects of a marriage is the way men experience appreciation and recognition. Many women assume that men are independent, self-sufficient, or emotionally resilient to the point that affirmation is unnecessary. Yet, for many men, feeling seen and valued is not a superficial desire. It is a core emotional need that shapes their sense of connection and fulfillment within the relationship. Men often define their contributions through action: they provide, they protect, they solve problems, they support, but if these efforts go unnoticed or unacknowledged, the very behaviors intended to express love can begin to feel invisible. Over time, a lack of recognition can create emotional distance, not because love is absent, but because the feedback loop that affirms their efforts is missing. Men often carry immense pressure to meet expectations, both external and internal, and they do so quietly, without complaint. In marriage, this pressure can manifest in subtle ways: working long hours, taking on responsibilities without acknowledgement, or making sacrifices for the comfort and happiness of their partner and family. When these acts are taken for granted or assumed as obligations, men may begin to internalize a sense of inadequacy, thinking that their contributions are never enough. Their silence, then, is not emotional detachment but a protective measure against the disappointment of repeated invisibility. They are giving, yet feeling unseen, which gradually erodes the intimacy they desperately want to maintain. Appreciation does not need to be grand or performative. It can be as simple as acknowledging effort, expressing gratitude for specific actions, or highlighting the qualities that a partner admires. For men, these moments of recognition are not just compliments, they are affirmations that their love, labor, and presence matter. When a partner consistently overlooks these expressions, it unintentionally sends a message that their contributions are expected, not valued. This can lead to withdrawal, reduced initiative in the relationship, or even passive resentment, all of which create distance that neither partner intends. Men are not immune to the human need for acknowledgement. In fact, many measure their emotional engagement through it. Recognition validates not only what they do but who they are. Understanding this need transforms the dynamics of connection. When a partner intentionally observes, names, and affirms his efforts, it opens a channel of trust and emotional reciprocity. Men feel motivated to continue giving, not out of obligation, but out of joy and love, because they sense that their actions have significance. Emotional intimacy is strengthened when the labor of love is met with attention, gratitude, and acknowledgement, creating a cycle where care is both expressed and recognized, deepening the bond between partners.